In this segment, we're going to take a look at the case of Navy SEAL Eddie Gallagher and how he was acquitted of murder for the death of a prisoner in his custody. Gallagher, he'll be demoted and his pay will be reduced because he was found guilty on a lesser charge, but he'll be able to avoid any additional jail time since he's already been confined for 200 days. Gallagher's attorney has confirmed that he will retire from the Navy in a few weeks once he hits 20 years of service. Navy SEAL Eddie Gallagher is celebrating his independence after the nearly 20-year combat veteran was acquitted of murdering a captured teenaged ISIS fighter. Last Wednesday, a jury decided to demote the decorated special officer, convicting him for wrongfully posing next to the corpse of that teen. Gallagher apologized to the jury for bringing a black eye to the Marines and the Navy. After the acquittal, Gallagher told Fox News,
"I believe, they tried to frame me as a criminal from the get-go, but, we knew the truth the whole time."
Prosecutors were unable to get the most serious charges to stick, alleging that in 2017, Gallagher killed this teenager seen wounded in this Iraqi TV video. At trial, a fellow SEAL testified Gallagher was supposed to treat the teen, but instead stabbed him.
I just want to make clear that this this small group of SEALs that decided to concoct this story in no way, shape, or form represent the community that I've loved.
The bombshell in the trial came when Corey Scott, a SEAL with immunity in the case, testified that he, not Gallagher, was the real killer.
It was shocking, but this whole thing has been shocking.
Throughout, Gallagher has received support from President Trump. The commander-in-chief even got Gallagher out of confinement before the trial.
What do you want to say to President Trump? Thank you.
After the acquittal, the president tweeting in part to the Gallagher family, "Congratulations, you've been through much together, glad I could help." And for more, let's bring in Gary Solis. I can't think of a better guest to discuss this. He's an adjunct professor at Georgetown Law School. He's also a retired Marine where he was a company commander in Vietnam. He's also a JAG and then later a former military judge. So he's seen this from pretty much every angle. Gary, thank you for a few minutes. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Now, I know the case can certainly be argued was not perfectly handled by the prosecution. There was some missteps some have argued that they made. But that said, by most accounts, the members of the platoon, and there were 6 members of SEAL Team 7 who worked with prosecutors for the better part of a year, they were shocked by the outcome. Let's talk a little bit about both the process and then also some of the consequences. So, as I mentioned, 6 members of Alpha Platoon SEAL Team 7, they came forward, and for a year, it went nowhere. None of their higher-ups moved the case along. In fact, they were told to basically stay quiet and drop it, or that there could be consequences to them as a professional career, plus all the internal pressures that went along with it. Nonetheless, they persisted. And you had some major folks that were attached to this, including the Master Chief, who was part of the group that came forward with this. Should these folks at the end of the day been surprised that higher-ups had no interest seemingly into pursuing this, and also how at the end of the day this was adjudicated?
They definitely should be surprised. They should also be disappointed because the higher command, when they received the report, had a duty to investigate. And they simply ignored that duty for a year. And in that year, of course, any leads got cold, stories became calcified, stories became changed, opinions became solidified. So they should certainly have been disappointed and surprised that it didn't go forward. And that is on the higher command. And by higher command, I mean the platoon leader, the lieutenant, and captains, that is Navy captains, who were in charge of the SEAL team. This thing should have gone to trial much sooner.
And just to amplify your bona fides here, you prosecuted more than 433 court-martials as a Marine JAG and more than 330 you presided over as a military judge. So you know of what you speak. But particularly with SEALs, it seems, Gary, and correct me if I'm wrong, there has to be a self-policing here where the code of conduct has to be observed, and you can't have junior SEALs afraid to come forward at all for fear of reprisals, or else this will never work.
That's very true. We have to inculcate within the members of our armed forces the idea that the truth, that you have to report war crimes. As a matter of fact, there is a DOD order that requires anyone who knows of or suspects that a war crime has been committed, that they report that to higher authority. The guys who knew about it, the guys on the ground, they did report it to higher authority. It's higher authority who blew the case. Now, one should also admit or recognize that it's always difficult to get junior Marines, sailors, whatever, to report war crimes committed by others within their ranks. And yet, that is what is expected of them, and that is what they're trained to do. And in this case, that is what they did.
So apparently, Gary, there's two different groups, and maybe you can expand a little bit more on this. The so-called pirates, operators within the SEALs who believe they got to have free rein here to, in effect, adjudicate justice on the field of combat. And then the others are the Boy Scouts who believe oversight, strict adherence to the rules is the only way this works. There are many that are concerned that post this verdict, the so-called pirates will take free rein here and the Boy Scouts are going to zip their lips going forward. Is that a legitimate worry?
Very definitely so. Everybody else in the SEAL community is going to look at that case and say, look what happened to those guys who turned in Gallagher. I'm not going to get ostracized by the rest of my friends. I'm not going to be distrusted on every mission I go on. I'm not going to wonder who's covering my back when we go into a house. Now, I think that this has very detrimental effects on reporting war crimes. As you say, the Boy Scouts are the guys who are supposed to be doing the right stuff. And in this case, as we said, they did do the right stuff. It's the pirates who should have taken the blame. And they didn't get the blame, and that was the fault of the prosecution, in my opinion.
What surprised me from the outside, Gary, was how vocal the defenders of Gallagher, given some of the serious charges that were out there, went. There were a lot of, in conservative media, who called these 6 SEALs that came forward either cowards or conspiratorial liars. The president went public with his support of all this. To that end, one thing Gallagher said after the verdict came down.
I would say to future Navy SEALs, loyalty is a trait that seems to be lost. I would say bring that back. You're part of a brotherhood. Remember, you're there to watch your brother's back. He's there to watch your back. And just stay loyal.
People said, forget lessons learned here. That's almost a tacit threat to those who decide to open their mouth. When you heard that, and when you saw those that both condemned the SEALs who came forward and also celebrated Gallagher for what he did, what's your takeaway as a longtime Marine?
There's no question what was required, and what was required was the right thing. They knew the right thing, they did the right thing, and now the guys who did the right thing are paying a price. My comments in the media have resulted in attacks on me. I've received, well, no need to go into it, but I've been called a lot of things in my career, but I got a few new ones just because I had the temerity to suggest that Gallagher had done something wrong. I can't imagine the pressure that must be on these guys now who actually told authorities what had happened. So this is going to be detrimental in the future for anyone who wants to report war crimes that they witness, and this is going to have a detrimental effect. And it's wrong for Gallagher to say this is about brotherhood, it's about who has your back. What he's suggesting is that criminality should go unpunished, not only unpunished, but unreported. And that's simply wrong, and it's up to the command to change that ethos in the SEAL community.
Gary Solis, I really appreciate a few minutes, and again, thank you for your time and your service.
My pleasure.
Up next, we will pivot to the world of politics and take a look at the latest numbers when it comes to the president and also where he stands on the issues along with the American public. In addition, we'll also show you the very latest revolt from the left of the Democratic Party and how they're giving fits to one Nancy Pelosi.